This Week in Startups is brought to you by Design Crowd. Best custom graphic, logo, and web designs for your business. Get $100 off your design project at designcrowd.com/twist or enter promo code TWIST. And Eero, the world's first home mesh Wi-Fi system. For free overnight shipping, visit eero.com/twist. At checkout, select overnight shipping, then enter promo code TWIST.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and we do the show twice a week, and we've done it for 6 or 7 years. We've done over 600 episodes, and boy, am I tired. No, I'm not tired. The tech industry is moving at a colossally fast speed. We are in the age of advancement. Things are moving faster than any of us expected. The companies are getting bigger. The cash hoards that these companies have is huge. M&A is going crazy. Investment is going crazy. And that leads to a lot of weird behavior. A lot of strange things start to happen when things move faster. Because if your trajectory is off and you're going slow, no big deal. You can course correct. But if your trajectory is off and you light the candle and the fuse gets lit, boom, things can get wacky. And things have gotten wacky in Silicon Valley recently. Lots of different companies have gone off the rails, jumped the fence, left the reservation. Pick the metaphor you want. And today, we're going to talk about what's in the news with two great journalists, Jeff Bercovici. I got it, right? Bercovici, I got it. And Jeff is with Inc. He's the San Francisco bureau chief, but previously you were at Forbes.
Correct.
Not Fortune, very important. Because people mistake these two brands. Fortune is a complete disaster. They gave over the whole editorial to any lawyer or accountant or headhunter who wanted to write a piece. But Forbes was actually still real journalism. Is that right? Fortune.
Your opinion.
Well, they did that contributor network, right? Was that Fortune or Forbes?
Forbes has a they both have contributor networks now, as does Inc., as do a very long list of publications at this point.
It's as a journalist when they let basically the inmates start to publish next to the journalists. Does that upset the journalists, piss them off a little bit, or do they make it super abundantly clear that this person is not on staff?
I think it should be made very clear. I wouldn't say. I mean, as a journalist, it's very rarely ever been an issue for me. We sort of do our job, and I'm focused on reading the rest of the web, not on reading my own site.
I've always had this problem with people apply for a press pass to one of the events, and then we read it, and I'm like, you're a salesperson for this value-added reseller. You're not a columnist for Fortune or Forbes or Inc. or whatever. They're like, no, I am. Look, here's my page. I'm like, okay, fine. Tell me who your editor is. They don't have an editor.
Yeah.
And for the first time, Olivia Zaleski, I got it right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Look at this. I'm doing well. Now, Olivia, you are a reporter over at Bloomberg.
Yes.
You've been there for how long?
Not that long. I started in January.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And where were you before that?
Grad school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
I was at Academy of Art here in San Francisco
very cool.
studying documentary filmmaking and multimedia video, and then started at Bloomberg just while I was at school.
Bloomberg has made a massive investment in San Francisco, huh?
Yeah.
I've been over the offices
and
2 or 3
growing.
times now, and it's unbelievable over there how big it is.
It's a huge office. It's exciting.
Huge office.
Really exciting.
What's your favorite doc, by the way? You have top 2 or 3 docs?
Oh, gosh.
I'm watching the Wiener doc right now.
Oh, I have to watch that.
Have you seen it yet?
Yeah.
I mean, it is unbelievable. This Huma, her husband, or his wife.
Yeah.
I mean, watching the scandal. I mean, you saw it. I mean, Jeff.
It's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. Why, in your mind? Just how insane this person is, Jeff Wiener, or... Not Jeff Wiener. Anthony Wiener. Jeff Wiener from LinkedIn.
Yes.
You're not insane, Jeff. I can confirm this. You're
much better at Twitter.
Anthony Wiener is insane.
And the insanity is captured on film in the fact that he never at any point during this insane sequence of events says, okay, we got to stop doing this documentary now. He just continues to believe that somehow this is going to play to his advantage.
That is you nailed it. I'm watching this. I'm only 2/3 of the way through it. I had to turn it off because my 7-year-old walked in the room, and the documentary is about all the stuff he does. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to pause this because it's just too salacious. But you get this ridiculous sense that at any minute he's going to tell them, turn the cameras off. And he doesn't.
Oh, I can't wait to watch it.
And you're like, this person is the most narcissistic, insane person I've ever seen. Did you get that sense?
Yeah, and I think I read this week that Huma never actually agreed to the documentary, which you can see when you watch it, that every time the cameras come in the room, she just like stiffens up. But I think she never even, I checked that.
Yeah, but it does feel, yeah. So what's your favorite, Olivia?
Oh, well, so I'm watching Cartel Land right now. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've heard about this.
It's fantastic.
Really?
It's really good.
That's on
but
my list.
it's very gruesome and upsetting, so I actually haven't finished it. But so far, I'm very into it.
What's your favorite outside of that? Do you have a favorite?
In bites. I mean, I have a few.
Go ahead.
I'm really into, I watched Food Inc. recently.
Yeah, great.
Like that. What is that? I'm now blanking on it, of course, when you ask me. The one, Beats Rhymes Life, or what was it? Do you know?
Award-winning producer Jackie will find it.
Yeah.
If you want to see a good one, Deep Water. Watch Deep Water. This is a really good one. It actually relates to the technology industry. It's about the time period where they would put out these like X Prizes, which actually X Prize is kind of based on, which is like, remember they was like first person to go across the Atlantic solo. So they do the first solo sail around the world. And this guy who's an electronics salesman decides that he wants to join the race. The only problem is he's not a sailor. Spoiler alert. And so he's going to solo sail around the world. And it just goes into this really dark, demented place. All right, speaking of dark, demented places, we have a lot of interesting things that have happened of late. And this is all with the backdrop of Theranos has imploded, 2-year ban for Elizabeth Holmes. And then you have Zenefits, which had some bad behavior, but now they seem to have cleaned it up. I'm friends with David Sachs over there. It seems like he's settling all the lawsuits. But there is this overwhelming discussion about, hey, are people breaking the rules a little bit or pushing too hard? And Olivia, you broke a pretty amazing story about Hampton Creek. For those people who don't know, Hampton Creek makes mayonnaise and cookie dough and vegan food.
Actually step in right here and say, I mean, I think it's a misconception that Hampton Creek makes mayonnaise. And everyone on the internet loves to focus on that when these stories of Hampton Creek are coming out. Like, oh, why do I care about this company that makes mayonnaise? You know, big deal.
Yeah.
But what Hampton Creek is really about is disrupting the food industry by creating alternatives to meat-based products, which if you think about it is an incredible idea. And there's a huge amount of potential there, not only financially, but also environmentally and really just holistically as you think about as emerging economies and developing countries grow and their appetite for meat product continues to grow beyond what our planet may be capable of producing. So there are great financial opportunities there as well as environmental opportunities. And it's not even opportunities, it might even be a necessity.
Right. If we're going to have the emerging world, which is what we used to call the third world, but I guess that's a little derogatory. So the emerging world, or the developing world, I think is the right way to say it. If they're going to start eating meat, it may not be actual meat they're going to eat. There's Beyond Meat, I guess, is doing fake meats as well.
A lot of companies are doing this, but I think it's narrow-minded to say, oh, they just make mayonnaise, because the whole premise of the company and the whole reason that Khosla invested and Founders Fund invested and these various venture capitalists got involved is because of the mission of the company is to develop new technologies that would then allow them to replace common products. What's happened, however, with Hampton Creek is that they have said they were going to develop a variety of different products, and so far they're best known for their mayonnaise product because the other products haven't perhaps come as quickly as they said they would.
Yeah.
And it takes time to develop these things, but I think this idea that it's like, oh, it's just a mayonnaise company is misguided. But anyway, you were asking about that.
Right. So somehow you found out that they may have been buying up their own product. Explain.
Well, we know they were buying their own
They've
product.
admitted this now. So tell me about the story, what you learned, how you learned it, and how this has developed over the last, I think it's been about a 2-week story now.
Yeah, I was working on it for several months, really, on Hampton Creek. So basically, I started at Bloomberg, and as a new reporter, usually you sort of get the beat that nobody else wants to cover, right? And so they said, focus on food tech. And I thought, oh gosh, no, it's because nobody else wants to cover it. And within first week of digging around, I immediately realized this is like the coolest beat in town because there are these global problems that can be solved, and it's really interesting. And there are so many cool new innovations that are coming out. So I was really excited about it, and I found out about Hampton Creek, and I thought, wow, this company's doing such great stuff. And what a
Looks good on paper.
charismatic founder, and he's so passionate. And started with the intention of writing sort of a glowing article, just like every other journalist had written about the company. And as I was doing that, somebody said to me, things aren't what they seem here.
Really?
And I sort of said, okay. And I took a step back and then, started talking to people and maybe asking more questions that I had intended, because I was sort of just taking the company at face value, that everything was great and it had this wonderful mission, which it still has that mission. And I think the people that work there are really good people. It's just a few things have gone off the rails. So anyway, started asking around and then got put in touch with the right person who gave me their investor deck. So I wrote a story about them raising money based on these incredible sales projections that just seemed a little off, like too bold. But, anything can happen in the future. So you don't want to judge a company on, and everybody I think knows in the Valley that when you project sales, you sort of take it with a grain of salt. But once I wrote that piece, others started coming forward to me and saying, this company, even what's in their deck, pitched to investors, isn't really accurate.
Oh, wow.
And you might want to dig in a little bit more.
Wow. So people start pointing you as a journalist in the direction of, hey, all is not what it seems at this company.
Exactly. And usually
these are people who are in the industry, who may be previous employees or other investors or just general contacts.
A variety.
Right. And multiple.
Yes. And so what I found, I think that I've gotten some criticism on the internet, especially from vegan food groups and various communities, that I'm going after this company. But it's quite the opposite. I've actually had people coming to me. I mean, at this point, I'm obviously reaching out to people inside the company, asking them to share things with me. I'm pursuing it as an investigative reporter, asking people.
And
but in the beginning, they came to me.
Yeah. And what was the main, I guess, claim that they did something that would be fraudulent or suspect or nefarious, whatever? What's the main charge?
So you'll have to read what is coming out later. Well, there's more coming.
But what was the thing in the story that everybody
so various people came forward on different things, and somebody said to me, I know this company buys their own product. And I thought, oh, really? No way. I said, yeah, like on a large scale.
On a large scale?
On a very large scale. And it's, I'd heard that sometimes companies that are starting out in the consumer packaged goods industry might tell friends and family, hey, buy, here and there. And it's more organic, like, guys, we really need to make sure we have great sales. And they sort of talk about it amongst themselves. And I'm not saying that that's okay or not okay. I'm just saying it would be naive of me to sit here and say that it's never happened. But to have a coordinated top-down effort in which it's very well organized, even if it is for quality assurance, whatever reason.
So they sent people to go buy the product, employees, third party. How did they do this?
So to answer your question, I started digging around. I thought, well, I don't think I should go from top down to ask this question. I think I need to talk to the people who purchased the product, and that was their job. And so I found that the company had a program of in-store demos in which they hired over 100 people, and Josh has said this, to essentially do these in-store demos. I started talking to them, and they pretty much confirmed that at a certain periods, that their job title changed from doing an in-store demo to purchasing large quantities or purchasing the entire shelf of the product.
Buying it out.
Yeah, so we're looking at like 170 jars of mayonnaise in a day, like those kinds of numbers.
Wow. So it's not buying 3 or 4 or trying to just sort of like, get on the radar. You're talking about buying out the store to hit a number probably for that week's sales.
Well, I mean, it's no coincidence that Hampton Creek has a press release that says they sold out of Safeway in the first 2 weeks. That's no coincidence. And that we know was sent to investors.
All right, when we get back, Jeff, I want your take on this as a seasoned journalist, and I want to talk about the SEC getting involved when we get back after this important message. And let's see, what important message am I going to read? Oh, very good. Visit designcrowd.com/twist and save up to $100 on your design project. If you don't know, designcrowd.com is a place where it's a marketplace, and you put up what you want to design, and a bunch of designers go compete and build you a great logo, designs for your website, etc. And they've got over 500,000 registered designers from around the world. It works really simple. You post a brief. Hey, here is what I'm looking for. And you'll receive 60 to 100 different designs or more. And you then provide feedback, and you get changes, so you can go back and forth. And then you select the best design and approve payment to that designer. And if this all sounds scary, like, oh my God, I've never done it before, don't worry. There's a money-back guarantee. And I did it for my website, calacanis.com, and for $500, we received over 350 designs. I'm not sure you're going to receive 350. I did tweet it, so maybe you'll receive 60 to 100, but it was amazing. We got a ton of great icons and illustrations and portraits and bulldogs. You can go see it if you go do a search over there. And you can help me select the winning design by voting at designcrowd.com/twist. Their other clients include Harvard Business School, the old HBS, Virgin, HTC, Absolute Vodka, Amnesty International, which was my first job out of school, and over 100,000 other small businesses. So here's your call to action, everybody. Go to designcrowd.com/twist and save up to $100 on your design project. Give it a shot. You're going to love it. I guarantee it. Designcrowd.com/twist, and you'll get $100 off. I guarantee it, but I don't have to guarantee it because they guarantee it. It's got a money-back guarantee. Design Crowd, it works. It's awesome. Go ahead and visit at Design Crowd. Oh, go ahead and follow them on Twitter too, at Design Crowd. Okay. Now, Olivia, there have been some updates to this story. They bought out all this. They said they were sold out. That to me sounds like fraud. It sounds to me like this is actionable. And I read somewhere the SEC is getting involved. What's the fallout been post the story?
So we did report that the SEC has made an inquiry.
An inquiry?
Inquiry is very different from an investigation. Sure. It's been really interesting to see this happens in media as the first story comes out and it's accurate and factual, fact-checked by Bloomberg, inquiry. And then other people follow on blogs and they'll say investigation.
Right.
We have no evidence that there is an investigation, inquiry. And you'd have to ask our SEC reporter what that really means, but we understand that the SEC has contacted the company, and we know that they have contacted sources.
I had this happen when Zenefits imploded. I got a little inquiry letter. Hey, Zenefits imploded. You know, Marin was on your podcast the week before and just wanted information because I think there is the SEC. You know, their job is to protect investors and invest and protect people from people selling securities and any shenanigans there. I'm sorry, did I say Zenefits? I meant Zirtual, the other Z. And Zirtual, you know, they went out in a very weird way. Like they were flying high, had a $10 million run rate, and then all of a sudden they're out of business. And, you know, we can get into the postmortem. You can Google it. But I don't think it ever went from this inquiry to investigation. But they will frequently ask, hey, can we get information on this?
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah,
I'm super curious because, so if you're an investor, right, and the SEC is looking into it, isn't it not really in your best interest, though, for the SEC to continue because it makes the company then look worse and then therefore your investment loses value? So wouldn't you kind of downplay anything that happened anyway?
Well, that company
and not
went out
you
of business,
specifically, but
and it's sort of already been reported. So I wouldn't normally talk about it, but it's already been reported and it's out there already. And the company's gone and it was sold and, I lost money, but it happens.
I guess my question is like,
my position with the SEC is, listen, I need to do everything by the books. This is my business. I take it seriously. And if anybody's not doing anything by the books, we need to immediately correct that as quick as possible. And if there's been any malfeasance or anybody's made any kind of mistake, if we want to be generous, or anybody's done anything intentionally, we need to get that out in the open, put sunlight on it, and fix it quick. That's from the investor standpoint, because I'm not judged on any one investment. I'm judged on my career as an investor. I want everything to be buttoned up. So you might have some individuals circling the wagon in a case like this, but I think generally investors do not want to get...
Because I'm wondering with Hampton Creek, would their investors... Because it's not good to have an SEC investigation, and it essentially...
Or inquiry.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Inquiry, thank you.
Easy to make a mistake, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And for them to say, well, it's not a big deal. thanks for policing on our behalf, but we'll take care of it ourselves.
Yeah, you don't have that choice. It's sort of like getting pulled over by the cops. Like if you get pulled over for whatever reason, you can just say yes, officer, no, officer, thank you, officer.
I guess it's that their job is to protect the investor, but if the investor's saying you're actually not protecting me, you're hurting me by drawing attention that's negative.
I understand that. They want to make sure also in the marketplace, I think people are playing by the rules. People understand the rules. Part of people understanding the rules is enforcing when people break the rules, right? It's sad, but like to know that you shouldn't point a laser at a plane's cockpit, like you have to put the dumbass in jail who did it so that everybody else who has a laser pointer understands like, oh no, that's seriously bad. So like they put this, I don't want to say poor kid, but somebody got 30 months in jail who was very young, and they pointed a laser pointer at a cockpit. It's like, well, it's a hard lesson to learn, and it really sucks that a young person is going to jail for whatever number of months. But now other people are not going to take down a plane with a laser pointer or blind a poor pilot.
Yeah.
I think what you're asking about is also a product of this situation that we've had for the last few years where founders, the balance of power between founders and investors has become, or had at least before the last, maybe year, become so tilted that often investors, they didn't have informational rights they would have had before.
Yep.
They didn't have, they would be relying on the SEC to tell them what's going on at a company they're investing in. So that might be one reason that they would be, more cooperative or less inclined to circle the wagons than you might think.
I want to also point out to the audience that Josh from Hampton Creek, the founder, was scheduled to be on the program last week. They reached out to us. We said, of course, you can come on the program. He launched some products at the launch festival. And he's coming on next week. So we're going to have him on. I'm going to grill him on all this, and we'll hear what they think. But I think you're right, Jeff. There has been, over the last couple of years, a little bit of a rush to invest in companies, a gold rush mentality. And yeah, people were willing to people were actually advising founders that it was kind of cool to not have any governance, to not have a board, to have super voting shares. And then, what's happened over the last couple of years, I've seen firsthand, is that a lot of the founders are saying, oh, the reason this didn't work out was I didn't have a board. So Matt from Circa, when he gave a postmortem of Circa, the news app, which I was an investor in, he said, everybody told me it was cool to raise $2 or $3 million and not have a board. I wish I had a board. Somebody would have had more at stake, and there would have been more governance, and there would have been more discussion about these finer points. And Zirtual had one board member, which was Tony Shea from Zappos, but then he gave one of his lieutenants who hadn't spent any time on boards and didn't have a lot of experience, the slot. So they had a board of two, which is the same as having a board of none almost, especially if the person is not super experienced. Tony's lieutenant wasn't super experienced. So this is something that's actually being reset in the Valley. You're correct, Jeff, that a year or two ago, this was still going on, but now it's really stopped. People are asking for monthly reports, quarterly reports. I have information rights, and I'm an angel investor, and I have that in every deal I do on the side letter is we get information rights, and we now specify what information rights mean. Bank statements, iTunes, Google Analytics, App Store, everything. Like we actually list it so that the founders can understand, because sometimes they see information rights and think, oh yeah, information, like what's going on with the business. Like no, details, actual statements. So what's the fallout been since all this has come down? You have another story coming out. So the other shoe is going to drop?
I don't want to talk about that. But,
right. Well, you said before you had another story coming.
Yeah,
so
I think there's more coming from
There's
this
more
company.
coming. And I'm assuming it's not champagne and roses.
It could be.
It could be. Okay.
Who knows? I'm going to keep that one.
Okay. But what was the fallout after this first story? They claim it was only $70,000 worth of mayonnaise or something.
Yeah, that's it. And if Josh is coming on next week, I'm sure that he'll say that as well. I would ask him if the 0.12%, he said it's not material, it's less than 1% of sales, if that's based on real sales or projected sales. I'd be curious to know.
Right.
What is that percentage based on? And
historical sales over 3 years, or
what you expect your sales to be.
Got it.
So I could be wrong. That's just something I'm curious about.
Jeff, what questions does this bring up for you when you look at a case like this, and they admit they did $70,000 worth of buying of stuff? Is there any possible explanation that would make this look less bad than it does?
I guess if the actual explanation were, quality testing or whatever they said was going on to the bizarre extent. I mean, I can't imagine how much quality testing you need to do on your mayonnaise. And I think, so when people call Hampton Creek a mayonnaise company, I think that's actually not just being snarky, but I think it's a shorthand way of saying that this is a company that is maybe claiming something more, to be doing something more high-flown than they are, because there is an incentive for them to do that in the form of getting a higher valuation. We see all kinds of companies out there that are saying, oh, we're not a fill in the blank company, we're a tech company. And you even, I mean, when you were talking about them being labeled a mayonnaise company, you were saying that what they're doing is disrupting food science, and that's fine.
Well, I'm saying that's the goal.
Absolutely, it's the goal. Just like it's the goal of Uber to be a transportation logistics company rather than to be a cheap cab service. But for a company that doesn't really have the kind of proprietary technology that where that's kind of still in the future, for them to say, we're not just selling mayonnaise, is a way of pumping up their valuation, which then puts pressure on themselves to chase that valuation by doing things like, I don't know, buying their own mayonnaise.
Yeah. I think you're hitting the nail on the head here. And my point in doing that was more to explain why this company is relevant, because I think it's a trend that we see in the Valley of taking something that is essentially kind of basic, and then if you can create the illusion that you are really more than you might be, that's when money pours in. And then there's a fine line between what you really are here and what you say that you are.
And in a way, isn't it a group
people
delusion,
invest
Jeff? Like where, the investors, the employees, the founders, and even the press to a certain extent, everybody's kind of joining this group sort of delusion, like, oh my God, this is the future. It changes everything.
Yeah, and I think Olivia was onto something also when you said that Josh Tetrick is I mean, his personal aura is a big part of that. He's a super charismatic, passionate, really likable, handsome guy, and when he talks to you about what he's doing, you want to believe he's going to do it.
The enthusiasm is there, and the reality distortion feel might be there as well. I mean, people talked about Steve Jobs being able to say, like, oh my God, look at this new product. And people were like, that looks like a Palm Pilot. Like, yeah, I've seen a touchscreen before. It's like, oh, no, you've never seen this. And it's like, no, I've seen a smartphone before. How is it different than this other product, right? But he was able to make it new again.
I think that's what's been so fascinating for me about doing this story, is that I feel like it really taps into these more personal issues that we have around hopefulness and the future, and probably why we're tech journalists in the first place. And the idea of innovating, doing things better, is at Hampton Creek, I think you want so badly that they're going to come up with these, that they are going to do these great things, and you want so to really believe in it and the mission. And so it's a real bummer to see that things aren't exactly as they have said they are, is one issue. And also that, do the end justify the means? Like, can you say, well, if you're going to essentially help the environment and help animals, does that mean you should really be able to do whatever you want in order to get there? These are questions that a lot of my sources have really struggled with.
Yeah, well, this is
coming forward to me, is they feel very guilty that they're coming forward because they don't want to hurt the industry. They feel very strongly about the plant-based food industry, but they feel this company is a bad egg, for lack of a better expression.
Well played. I mean, journalists need to, Jeff, when they're in their job, be skeptical. But it's hard sometimes because you do want to see, say, self-driving cars reduce the number of deaths on the road. You do want to see certain things like we don't have to kill as many cows every year in factory farms. Like, how do you manage that as a journalist, making sure you're continuing, because you covered Hampton Creek a couple times. But you never caught wind of any sort of malfeasance there.
Not this kind of malfeasance, no. I had, like, I'd say most journalists who've ever written about them, you sort of know their claims are inflated. Oh, they say that they've got this huge proprietary database of protein substitutes, but we keep hearing about yellow pea protein for some reason. Is that the only one they have? So, you sort of know maybe there's a lot of hot air, but that hot air is different from out and out, deception.
Right. And that's where we sort of landed now. And if you look at Theranos, out and out deception, and it seems to be, what a lot of the claims have been for that company as well.
Yeah.
How many when you look out at the companies here, do you think the journalists and the press corps now is going to look at Silicon Valley after their post Theranos, post Hampton Creek, as benefits to a lesser extent, just a lot of sort of bad behavior and, in some cases malfeasance? Do you think journalists are taking a fresh look at Silicon Valley and saying like, hey, let's bang a little harder?
I think we're all mindful, and I, as somebody who has written about Hampton Creek, and I have written about them. I wouldn't say I've written about them positively per se, but I have presented claims that they've made uncritically on the assumption that I think journalists make a lot. That if somebody wants to speak words into my microphone, I can relay those words to readers,
right.
and that that's on the speaker.
Right.
However, I am much more aware, and I think most of our colleagues are much more aware now, that the time lag between that person saying whatever they say and it coming out that they were lying might be uncomfortably short, and that the guy holding the microphone is going to look pretty bad if we don't dig a little deeper than we were doing maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah. It seems like the stakes are becoming clear now when, I guess, 5 or 6 publications put Elizabeth Holmes on the cover.
We were one of them.
And you were one of them, and it's like, oh, we put her on the New Yorker, too, did a glowing profile. It's like, we're doing all these glowing profiles, and nobody's really digging too deep. All right, when we get back, we're going to talk about the story everybody's talking about, which is Peter Tiel has executed the greatest revenge in the history of revenge, I think, by bankrupting Gawker, Nick Denton, AJ, poor AJ, and the whole kit and caboodle has been sold for $135 million. Probably would have been worth $250 or $350 if it had not been under the assault of Hulk Hogan. And when we get back on This Week in Startups, and let me take a quick moment to thank our second and final partner, Get Aero. Aero is the world's first home mesh Wi-Fi system. And if you don't know what a mesh Wi-Fi system is, it's enough that it is fast and it's going to blanket your entire house or apartment. I have it. It works. It's amazing. When you replace your old routers, you're going to be like, oh my God, I didn't realize Wi-Fi could be this fast. And it is very simple to install with an iOS or Android app, and it just blankets your home in Wi-Fi coverage. The first one replaces your existing router, and then additional arrows plug into outlets, connect wirelessly for fast, reliable Wi-Fi. So you don't need to put Ethernet in every room. And it's just incredible. I use it. It's a great, great product. Everybody, if you just do a search on Twitter or Facebook, you'll see everybody talking about it because it's one of those products that's just light speed ahead of the products that came before it. Free overnight shipping. Visit eero.com, Aero, eero.com. And at checkout, select overnight shipping, then enter the promo code TWIST, This Week in Startups, TWIST, and you'll get free overnight shipping. That's a really good offer. Go get it now, eero.com, EERO, and use the promo code TWIST for overnight shipping. It is a great product. I can't speak highly enough of it. And literally, if you look at all the reviews, it's 5-star reviews from everybody. It's a really killer product. I don't know what I would have done without it, because I literally had all these bad places where like Netflix was stopped streaming, and my wife is like, Wi-Fi doesn't work in this room, and now I don't have any of those complaints. I didn't want to say it, Jeff, but it's a pretty big house. It's bigger than the crummy apartment and dirty loft I lived in New York. But it would have made the crummy, dirty loft in New York illegal, I might add. Illegal loft.
Broke the law.
I lived in a loft on West 22nd Street in the West Side Highway, owned by Leona Helmsley, who was the woman who had the shoe collection, if you remember, and she gave all the money to a dog or something. I came in. The guy shows me the place. I said, how much is it? He said, well, it's $9 a square foot. I said, okay, how much is that? He said, $1,600 a month. I said, it's 2,000 square feet for $1,600 a month. I'm looking out on the Hudson with 13-foot ceilings. I'll take it. What's the catch? He's like, you want Con Ed or you want My Ed? I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, if you get Con Ed, you get a bill every month. If you get My Ed, I just hook you up to the lights over here, and then you just, you take care of me. I said, no, I'm going to take care of you anyway, but put me on the Con Ed because it's a business expense. And I live there. They sold the building, and these French Hasidic guys put the office next to my loft. And they saw me going in and out every day with my dog, and they knew I lived there. And then they were going to kick me out, and then I convinced them not to kick me out for the last couple of years at least. But I was basically living there illegally. But the way they got everybody out was they clipped everybody who was on my ed instead of Con Ed and turned off their service.
Oh.
This was New York in the 90s. You could live illegally in commercial spaces.
I did too.
You did too?
Yeah, I did too.
Whereabouts?
It was in the Village. It was, we didn't have any, it was 99, the hottest summer in history. Although I think
no AC, right?
No AC and no windows. The only way we could get air into the apartment was to open the door at the top of the stairs into the Korean hair salon at the top of the stairs.
No problem.
That sounds dangerous. Wait, no windows. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
And what was it, 1,000 a month? 1,200?
Yeah, something like that. I think it was 750.
750.
Yeah.
You do what you got to do. You can't do that anymore. This is one of the bummers about New York. You can't do any. So anyway, listen. This is what Nick Denton's going to have to do now. He's getting rid of his. Oh, was that two? Nick Denton and I were rivals. But anyway, for those of you who have not been paying attention to the media story of the decade or the century, Gawker lost their huge $140 million judgment to Hulk Hogan for publishing the sex tape. Peter Tiel secretly funded it. Peter Tiel now is out as the, pun intended there, as the backer of these lawsuits. It worked. Univision bought Deadspin, Lifehacker, Gizmodo, Jalopnik, Jezebel, and Kotaku for $135 million, but they left behind Gawker.com. Nobody would touch that. There were only 2 bids on it. And there has been a ton said about this. What is your take on it, Jeff? When you see Gawker, whose fault was it? Was it suicide? Was it a murder? Was it a murder-suicide? Who's responsible for the death of Gawker, ultimately?
I think Peter Tiel's responsible for the death of Gawker. I don't think there's any way around that. I mean, he is a unique guy. I think we can all agree. There aren't a lot of Peter Tiels in the world.
No, there's one.
There's
for
exactly
sure.
one.
Let me think of it. Gay, conservative, backing Trump, venture capitalist. Yeah, I think there's one.
If he hadn't done what he did, would Gawker have died a death because of some other lawsuit? No, absolutely not. None of the other. I mean, there was never a defamation case against them that resulted in a large verdict. There was
they settled.
Ordinary run of business. Nothing like this had ever happened to them.
They were able to settle a lot of the claims, right?
As happens in the news business all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you blame Peter Tiel. Do you feel that they deserve their fate in any way, Gawker? I mean, some of the bad stuff they did was pretty horrendous. I'm assuming stuff you would never do.
They definitely published things that I wouldn't do for good and for ill. They also did things that were, I think, brave and took a degree of admirable obsession to report that I wouldn't have done either. So I'm not going to. Such as I think that they did a lot of fantastic reporting about Fox News, which John Cook, who with the executive editor at Gawker and a good friend of mine, had his kids followed by investigators hired by Roger Ailes because of stories he did about him.
Yeah, that is insane.
That's ballsy. I'd be afraid to do that.
The world has gone mad.
Yeah.
When Roger Ailes, who I don't know if he's a billionaire, but certainly a centimillionaire, is like hiring people to trail like some Gawker blogger and his kids, the world has gone crazy.
And who's going to, here's my problem with this, is who's going to do that now? Roger Ailes, as we've all found out in the last 8 weeks, Roger Ailes, even worse than any of us knew. Who is going to go after him fearlessly now that there's not some crazy band of pirate journalists protected by Nick Denton, the only, I mean, if Peter Tiel's one of a kind, Nick is pretty close too.
Oh no, Nick is a unique snowflake in the universe, for sure.
It's just going to be lost. No one's going to be, the journalism world is not spawning new Gawkers to fill
The Intercept.
Gap. The Intercept. Sure, the Intercept's good, but it's
theoretically,
not the
they're doing hot. What do you think?
I disagree. Respectfully, I think that good journalists will find a way to be fearless and tell their story no matter what. And good publications and good organizations will allow them to do that. Of course, people get scared and they back off and organizations get nervous, but I don't think that the fact that Gawker is gone means that that less stories will come to light. I do think, though, less stories that never really had a place or really should have been, I guess they're not even stories. It's like snarky conjecture.
They
not
certainly
exist
push
to the
envelope
extent
on exposing people's personal life that other publications didn't find necessary. I'm talking about Gawker on its worst day. The outing of the Condé Nast CFO, the publishing of a drunk possible rape in a bathroom stall. I mean, there was some really abhorrent stuff that nobody in any other publication would have published, I don't think.
I think that's true. However, I think that's a product of, and Nick would point out that Gawker published over 200,000 posts in the time that they're around. So yes, you can definitely find some examples of very bad judgment.
And in life, you get judged on your worst days. I mean, if you don't commit murder for 1,000 days and commit murder on the 1,001st day, you get convicted of murder on the 1,001st day. The other 1,000 days of not killing people doesn't count, does it not?
Okay, that's true. However, I think that so there's been, especially here in Silicon Valley, the reception of the verdict against Gawker and of the shutdown of Gawker has been just applause. People love it. There are very few people in Silicon Valley, outside maybe the journalism world, who see this in any way as a bad thing. And to me, I find that I find real cognitive dissonance there, because these are the same people who are, and they're all saying, well, Gawker broke the law. This is just what happens when companies break the law. Meanwhile, these same people are applauding, maybe investing in companies like Uber, Airbnb, Google, Microsoft, Apple. All of these companies have broken the law at some point. They all hewed to the mantra that it's better to ask forgiveness than ask permission. What's the difference? I mean, Gawker pushed the limits. And
Olivia, you want to say something? I see you're biting your tongue over there.
And I am biting my tongue because I feel like I'm one of the few. I'm the only journalist that I know that feels like really torn on this story, because frankly, I'm afraid to say this because I don't want to be judged, but I don't see Gawker as real journalism. I just don't. I think they had some incredible stories here and there that are cherry-picked, that are great, and they broke great news. Like we were talking earlier about the mayor or the
Tom
Roger
Ford
Ailes
smoking
stuff.
crack.
Yeah, the Roger. But I feel like you can count them on two hands. I mean, and I don't. It's sort of like, when do you pick and choose when you're going to say you're a journalist? Are you going to say you're a blogger? Or are you going to say you're a journalist? Are you going to be gossip site? Or are you a snark site? Or are you going to be a journalism site? And so we're holding different standards. And I feel like if they're going to play with fire, this is what happens. But I also don't feel like it's a loss for journalism. I'll
tell you why it's a loss for journalism.
But please persuade me, because I would rather be of your camp, because I'm losing friends on this.
Here's what makes Gawker unique. What makes Gawker unique is Nick recognizes that in journalism there's so many reasons not to publish something. It's gonna piss off a friend of the owner of the company. It's
advertisers, marketers.
Exactly. So Nick recognized that, and he said, we need to have a company with a bias towards publishing what we know, or what we think we know, or what we think about something. And if there's not a reason we can't publish it, we will publish it. That's unique, and it's resulted in them publishing some things that honestly every other media company would be afraid to publish. I mean, there are things that you can't publish at Bloomberg. There are things that I wouldn't be able to publish at Inc.
A sex tape.
A previous company I worked about, I was covering the media beat, and I couldn't write about Fox News because our owner was friends with Roger Ailes and would get angry phone calls from him.
Interesting.
Gawker was the only outlet for stories like that. They're not going to exist anymore.
So.
I just want to make one. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm a little naive in this, in that I just haven't had those experiences yet. And I'm not saying this because I'm at Bloomberg, but I don't think that at Bloomberg there are stories that we don't cover. There are stories we don't cover because they have to do with people's personal lives that have nothing to do with business, and there's no sort of narrative that is productive beyond just sharing a sex tape, or, it's not relevant. And we have covered the Gawker Peter Tiel situation because obviously that has to do with libel and other greater concepts. But the original story, the same way that we are not interested in looking at Josh Tetrick's sex life, that we're just not going to talk about that because it's not relevant to the conversation. So I'm sure there are situations. I just don't feel like that I've come across them just yet. I'm sure that I will. But I think that certainly this does happen, but to lose Gawker on that, I don't think is to say that those stories will never get told. I feel like almost maybe it's necessary for all the other things that they did that are just, in my opinion, I feel like are just really add a negativity that it's just, I don't know how to say this. It's like, is it worth it? If they're doing so many other things that are not journalism and just like picking on people that have no place to be in the public eye in the first place.
There are not a lot of winners in all of this. Nick Denton pushed the envelope way too far in some cases. And when you talk about Gawker, you're not talking about one thing. You're talking about 13 years, many different editors, and Nick Denton being an absent owner and absent editor for much of that time. He would let people do anything they wanted. And when people, and Gabriel Snyder wrote this, when he wrote about his time and tenure there, he was fired by Nick, but when he hired him, he didn't give him any instructions. He would just, Nick, and this is a strength and a weakness, he would hire people and let them do whatever they wanted, and people ran amok. And that's when things like the outing of the CFO and publishing a potential sexual assault and all the stuff that they later retracted, that's when that stuff occurred, because there were literally no controls in place. And so if you run a gossip publication with no controls and you print anything that comes into the tip line, you're going to eventually get yourself in a lot of trouble. And they did a lot of settlements, from what I understand.
And that's my argument, is that printing anything that comes into the tip line, in my opinion, isn't journalism, because then in journalism you would pursue those and fact check them and make sure.
Of course, but anyway, hold on. But let me just finish my overall thing. So you have Nick Denton and you have Gawker, which is not one thing. It is many things at many different times. When Elizabeth ran the site, Elizabeth Spears, when she ran it, she had a certain way she ran it. Gabriel ran it a different way. And when AJ and other people ran it, and I'm friendly with AJ and was an investor in his company, Radar, they took different, they put the line in different places. And so you have people talking about different iterations of Gawker. Now, when you look at Peter Tiel, and then you look at journalists in general, so you have these other two parties, and this is why people have a hard time reconciling this. If you're a journalist, you are for the First Amendment, you don't want to see billionaires shut down publications. It is very, very scary to think that a billionaire could use their money to not only bankrupt the publication, but then go after AJ personally and go after individuals personally. And any assault on any journalist, this is what you're experiencing as a new journalist.
And just to be clear, I am not saying that that's okay. Right. Because I am very against that idea.
But all journalists, what you'll learn over time is all journalists are going to circle the wagons when any journalist is attacked, whether they're kidnapped, whether they're brought in to give up a source. There is a esprit de corps in journalism where people generally are going to fall on freedom of the press to do this. And whenever you talk to any journalist about the outing of the CFO or the rape tape or any of these things, they all say, I would never do that, and I don't think Gawker should have done it. But they also say, I also don't think Peter Tiel should be able to shut down companies and billionaires shouldn't be able to shut down companies. So you have two very ugly situations. And at the end of the day, none of this would have happened, I believe, if a gay writer, Owen Thomas, with a gay owner of a publication, didn't out another gay man at a point in time when being gay was a huge liability in the world, when someone like Tim Cook was closeted and had to be closeted and probably would not have been named the CEO of Apple if he had not been in the closet, when Nick Denton actually was very much quiet about his sexuality in the years before, in the 2003, 2004. I didn't know he was gay. Most people didn't know he was gay. They might have had some assumptions or guesses, but he was not out in that way. He was quietly, understatedly a gay man. And Peter was certainly not out. He was just in the process of talking to a couple of his friends about it. He might have been out in the gay community, but not out in a general sense. I don't think any of this happens if it was 2016 when being gay was not, what it is today. Back then it was like I don't want to say a death sentence, but it was certainly a career limiter.
But do you think none of this would have happened if, so say they outed him for being gay, which is, we know it happened, but then they didn't do any of the other things that upset Peter Tiel?
I think all that would have upset him.
You think there would be no lawsuit, or you think there would still be a...
I don't believe there would have been a lawsuit. I think it got so personal based on the outing that just set Peter on a path of revenge that got very personal. That's my personal belief, knowing both of the individuals.
Can I ask what you're basing that on?
Because I'm basing it on my knowledge of knowing Nick since the inception of Gawker and knowing Peter Tiel before he was out. I
haven't talked to Peter about the lawsuit because he hasn't returned any of my emails in a while. Oh, you have? Okay.
I have talked to Nick and Peter over email.
And has Peter characterized how large a factor the outing was?
No, I don't think he would. But what he did say, and he's been public about this now with his New York Times article, but a regular civilian could not defend themselves, even a millionaire could not defend themselves against Gawker. And so he feels that by backing people who were wronged, he is providing a service and support to people who are being bullied by Gawker. And a lot of people have been bullied by Gawker and have been, really ridden hard by them. And then in a lot of cases, correctly so, in some cases, not correctly so. And so he thinks actually he is helping journalists and helping journalism by getting rid of a publication that didn't adhere to journalistic standards. And they didn't adhere to journalistic standards. They broke all of them frequently. But I don't think any journalist thinks that there should be a death sentence where individual journalists should be sued out of existence.
That's the thing, is we have systems to deal with this, and he subverted those systems. The American legal system is designed, it's expensive to sue somebody, and that's partly...
Not if you're a billionaire.
Exactly. That's partly by design. You are not supposed to be able to pursue dozens and dozens of lawsuits and without caring about whether they win.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be a constraint to, you're not supposed to be able to use the courts in that way. That's spamming the courts. He did a DDoS attack on the courts.
What if he had done it openly?
I think, among other things, it would have completely changed the flavor of the trial in Florida. Completely.
You think they might have come to a different conclusion? Would the jury have known about that? Were they sequestered, I wonder?
Would they have known it? Yeah, I think it would have been introduced into evidence. I think Gawker's lawyers would have said,
this is a group effort. Could have changed it. Here's the other thing. On the people who are pro this, Peter Tiel didn't get that judgment. A jury gave it. And so, people want to say, oh, it's a Florida jury. Oh, they're anti, the New York, gay Jewish publisher. They love Hulk Hogan because he's the most popular celebrity there. I've heard all these sort of things floated. But, Gawker, Denton did say many times to me and publicly that the thing that would take down Gawker eventually would be a lawsuit. He actually believed that. He constructed the company, in fact, in multiple shell companies and trademarks and offshore accounts all over the place to try to defend against this. He actually anticipated it and had said publicly that this would be the downfall, would be the lawsuits eventually. So he kind of knew that. So 2 questions. 1, will Peter Tiel sue another publication out of existence in his lifetime? And number 2, what is Nick Denton going to be doing in 18 months? Who wants to go first?
I don't think Peter Tiel will sue another publication out of existence because I think he is not going to care about journalism. He's going to move on. He's not going to...
So he's done?
He's done for better and worse because it's not his problem that he's broken something important in journalism.
Right.
He doesn't care about journalism. He wasn't here to fix journalism.
So that New York Times story where he sort of claims that he's helping is all BS.
No, he cares about bullying and he cares about privacy. He does care about those things. That's legitimate. But he doesn't care about journalism.
How do we know he doesn't care about journalism? I just want to ask, playing devil's advocate here, but do we have any reason to believe he doesn't care?
Well, has he done anything else? Has he done a way to know if he truly cares about journalism? Has he done anything else in his career that would show supporting a free press? And I don't know that he has explicitly done anything. He did invest in Pando, Sarah Lace's company.
But I don't think we can say he doesn't care about journalism. I think that's why this is so tricky because it goes back to my question.
I don't think he cares about or appreciates the special function of journalism that is recognized in the First Amendment that the courts have historically paid deference to. Journalism is not like other industries in American legal thinking. And I don't think he recognizes necessarily the privileged place of journalism. And I don't think all the people who are saying, Gawker should pay for their sins or whatever recognize the privileged place of journalism.
So where
I'm
will
a
Peter
journalist
sue? Will he sue another one out of existence?
I don't, unless there's, I would be shocked. I really would be.
Correct. Both are correct. The answer is he will not sue another one because it would get him kicked off the Facebook board and make him even more of a pariah.
You know what's ironic is that his place on the Facebook board is secure because of Gawker, because they reported what they did about the news feed, trending news potentially being biased against conservatives. If Facebook were to kick off the most famous conservative and Donald Trump supporter off their board.
What a chess move. Wow, what a great observation, Jeff. That's right. Because Zuck brought Glenn Beck and everybody else over to say, hey, we don't want to lose any users. We need all the conservatives we get. If he kicks off is that why Peter spoke at the convention? Now we can get into a real conspiracy theory.
Oh boy.
He spoke at the convention to allow conservatives to continue, he spoke at the RNC, to allow conservatives to embrace Facebook as a non-liberal, lefty platform in Silicon Valley. What a conspiracy theory. I like it, Jeff.
Well, I mean, on that vein of thinking, I think we should expect that anything can happen with Peter Tiel, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if in the coming months or years that he actually does something that does, in a way, just to throw a curveball, promote journalism, just to make us guess and keep us thinking. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next? But
very good point, Olivia.
Yeah.
I'm going to go pitch him on Inside.com. I bet you I can get him to invest based on this, because he's got.
But he's a man of paradoxes. I mean, you think he's one thing, and then it turns out he's another. So I wouldn't be surprised.
He's very unique.
He does
in that way.
Totally
and actually,
random.
did you cover his drinking young blood startup?
Yeah.
I'm being a little bit
Tell us
facetious,
about
but
I did.
I seem to remember that.
He's not involved with that startup. He did. A person who works with him did make inquiries, but it was more of an informational type inquiry to find out what they were doing. I mean, he is very interested in
Life
a number
extension.
of technologies that involved in life extension, including this one, which is.
Wait, what's this? Or is it literally drinking blood or transfusing blood? What is it?
It is transfusing blood. It's based on research that was conducted in mice called parabiosis, where they would actually cut the mice open down their flanks and stitch them together so that their circulatory systems would merge. Now they are experimenting.
I think I saw like a B science fiction movie from the 70s where they did that.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So a number of researchers now are doing studies in humans that are based on that principle, where they're basically taking blood plasma from young people, usually around 20, and transfusing it in people over 40, and then looking at what happens with their blood markers, their hormones, and
It would make total sense. Theoretically, I'm no scientist, but it does make sense that if they do platelet surgery or I don't know if you do platelet replacement stuff,
Sure.
where they spin your own blood. Kobe did it. A bunch. Tim Duncan did it, I believe.
Lance Armstrong do something around that?
different.
That's doping. That's taking your
but
blood
the
with
other
extra oxygen in it. From
That was
a high,
for red blood cells, not platelets.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
yes.
but the platelets is they spin your blood, take your platelets, and then re-inject them into an area where, like your knees. And I think that science is debatable.
It's pretty. PRP is pretty common part
Platelet
of
replacement.
post-surgical protocols now. Yeah.
So this makes sense to me.
It's the animal studies are actually amazing because the really amazing thing is that the people who get these transfusions are not people, because that's not proven yet, but the organisms who get these transfusions, not only do they enjoy a benefit after getting the blood, but the benefit continues for a long time. It seems to somehow reboot your body's kind of hormonal system, so that you're secreting the hormones of, for a long time afterwards, of someone who's younger.
In related news, just breaking now, I read that Gawker has settled with Peter Tiel, and the youngest three of the Gawker writers are going to give Peter Tiel their blood in exchange for dropping the lawsuit. So we're all set.
You had me for a moment there. I'm so
Pretty
gullible.
good. Okay, so now my second question. Peter Tiel is definitely, you guys got the answer correct. I'm doing a little McLaughlin, rest in peace. The McLaughlin group, he died, I guess. Correct. Peter Tiel will not sue anybody. It's just too bad PR for him. He doesn't want to deal with that. So what will Nick Denton be doing in 18, 24 months from now? Olivia, you want to take that one? What's your guess as to what happens to Nick Denton? He's been paid $16,000 a month. Everybody thinks that's a big number, but that's only $200,000 a year. It's not actually that much money he was probably making $3 or $4 million a year at Gawker for his share of the profits, I'm guessing. So if he made $4 million over the last 10 years, 3 or 4 million, he's probably got $20-30 million in a bank account somewhere. What are your thoughts?
So my guess is that
18, 24
he'll have a
months.
couple drinks in the next couple weeks, and then he'll get right back on his feet, and he'll come back swinging with some other great project or something that, I mean, he's a huge brand. He has a lot of respect. People love him and want to work for him, want to work with him. So I'm sure he'll come up with something that's huge. I have no doubt.
Jeff, what do you think? Because did you see the non-compete that had half of it redacted and half of it not redacted? What's in the second half of the redacted non-compete, I wonder? And what will he be doing in 24 months, Nick Denton? I know.
You know?
Well, I'm pretending I know. But anyway, go ahead.
I don't.
I think I know.
I don't think that the non-compete will be an issue. I talked to him a few weeks ago. I think he's pretty darn burned out on the news business for right now.
Yep.
I think he has got a longer form writing project that he'll do for a while, and then I honestly don't know past that. I just don't think it'll be news, not for a long time. A lot of people will be clamoring for him to restart Gawker.
Yep.
Just to for the principle of it to show that it can't be silenced, but I don't think that's what his appetite's at for at all.
Again, both correct. Congratulations. You're both 2 for 2. Denton's going to take a year off, perhaps 2. The Gawker asset was not purchased. In the second half of the non-compete, I believe, was that he can write a book or a screenplay or a TV show based on Gawker. He will get the Gawker asset, make a television, book, or movie out of it, or all 3, or some combination of thereof. And shutting down the site was an olive branch or a way to make Peter and Hulk feel like they won. The site's been shut down. And the end game here will be Hulk Hogan wants money. Hulk Hogan's into money. It's not just, I mean, everybody likes money. If they have that $135 million, $140 million judgment against them, they stole for $135. That $135 million is in a bank account somewhere, right? It's being held. Most people believe that on appeal, the judgment's going to get lowered. Some people think it will go down to single digits or 0. I don't know if you've heard this, but it could win on appeal. My guess is half the money from the sale goes to Hulk Hogan and the lawyers. Hulk Hogan makes 50. Peter Tiel gets back 10 million. The lawyers get another 10, 20 million. At least 50 million left for the shareholders of Gawker, the entity, and the Gawker assets there. I believe then Nick Denton will get the Gawker asset and some percentage of that money. And what's happening right now is the negotiation of that huge pile of cash. There's a huge pile of cash there. And Hulk Hogan has to decide if $50 million, which is more money than I think he'll ever make, given he's kind of not famous anymore, he's just infamous, he'll take the $50 million, $75 million, rather than risk it. And Peter would like to have an end game. Everybody wants to get this over with, I think. There's an end game. I think even Peter Tiel is probably burnt out on it. So that's my theory, is that in order for Nick to get his $50 million, for Hogan to get his $50 million, for all this, and Peter Tiel to save face and feel like he's won, maybe Gawker has to be shut down and the asset has to go away, or maybe Peter gets it, Denton gets it back. What do you think of my theory?
It sounds reasonable, which makes me think that it might not happen. I mean, the way that they've been going after AJ is just so. Everything about this case has been so unique. I mean, they offered Hogan settlements worth tens of millions of dollars, and were shocked that he didn't take it.
Yeah, you would think $20 or $30 million is so yum. Would he have to pay tax on it?
Not only that, then he would have actually just had that money. He wouldn't have to,
Peter Tiel must have said to him, I will either give, this is my theory. Again, rampant speculation, which I can do. I'm not a journalist anymore. Just do random acts of journalism. I believe Peter Tiel gave him a backstop and said, even if the whole thing blows out, I'll give you $20 million.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
It's like, because Peter's used to doing that. Like if a founder wants to sell the company for $1 billion, Peter might say, hey, or venture capitalist, I'll let you sell your shares in secondary, essentially. I'll let you sell part of the judgment. I'll buy part of the judgment from you now. Peter could have said, I'll buy half the judgment from you for $20 million now, or a $20 million guarantee. If the judgment goes to zero, you get to keep the $20 million, but I'll keep you in the game to kill Denton.
Now imagine if that's true, and that agreement were part of discovery in the trial. Would it really have all come out the same way?
No,
Probably not. I don't know. The thing with the Florida jury, there is something to that. Juries let OJ off. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, juries are imperfect.
You make a really good point that I just want to stress, is that the justice system is not designed to placate billionaires. I mean, it should not be abused in that way. And I think that's a really important point to consider here, whether or not you think that Gawker is or is not journalism. And what happened here is much bigger.
By the way, Gawker is and is not journalism. There's no question in my mind about that. Also, BuzzFeed is and is not journalism. Vox is and is not journalism. That whole debate is something that I feel like we had a lot, 5-10 years ago, and now it's just...
It's there, and we have to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are very few purely journalistic sites left, or entities. Even... I'm trying to think of a site that you wouldn't expect to go lowbrow that has. Anyway, the Huffington Post was always a facade. I mean, it was like, here's some, 10 great stories by George Clooney and other friends of mine, Ariana's friends, and then they would reblog with the Huffington Post editor byline and just do a block quote. I mean, the whole thing was one giant block quote. They would take everybody's stories, especially if they're behind a paywall, and block quote it and write an intro paragraph. And it was probably done in Manila or by a first-year journalism student.
Well, and the Huffington Post was the first one to really understand what the internet's disaggregation of editorial product meant in terms of being able to package together journalism with non-journalism. It doesn't matter to the readers. They're not consuming it as a product that is, this kind of crazy salad of content. They're just reading what they want.
Journalism really is interesting, this creative destruction that's going on right now. The advertising on publications it's so hard to get advertising when you have Google and Facebook with so much more.
Talk about it's depressing.
So much more advertising. Well, no, but if you look at Bloomberg, they have the terminals, which can just print money. And then you look at the Information or other Wall Street Journal or New York Times, they're really getting subscription revenue dialed in. Inc., I'm not sure. It's a combination of subscription and advertising.
Yeah, our conferences too.
The conferences. That's the other big piece, is if the conferences can subsidize the editorial. All right, moving on and wrapping up. Olivia, you're doing a robotics video series. Tell us about that.
Yes, I'm looking for ideas. If you know, I guess email me at ozaleski@bloomberg.net. Looking for ideas about businesses that are using robotics in interesting ways, stories that have not been told yet, ways that robotics are entering our lives seamlessly and visibly, I guess, is there's certain robotics that you don't even know that exist.
The Nightscope is the obvious one.
Is that the security?
The security guard. They debuted at the launch festival 4 or 5 years ago, but it ran over a kid. Sure about this?
I don't know if ran over is
into a kid?
The kid ran into it is the other interpretation.
What may have happened was the kid was really curious, as they would be, because this cool R2-D2 thing is, meandering around, and probably went up to it and maybe fell back or something. I mean, those things are going to happen. And there was a photograph of the scrape or bruise on the internet, but it was not beaten by this robot or, it was barely anything.
Here it is. Here's the kid's, poor kid. I don't know exactly.
Oh, well, that actually looks a little worse than I remember. Are we sure that's the same picture?
This is, I think that was the actual photo.
You can't tell from this photo, but the robot is red hot at all times.
Yes, that's it.
That
truly,
looks worse than I remember.
It's truly an effective robot because it's 500 degrees.
Okay, so it burned it.
Well, it looks like a friction burn of some type, but I don't know if that's the foot or the arm or what it is. But it did knock into a kid, and thanks for the.
Well, it's sort of interesting because the few companies that I've visited that have robotics really interacting with people, they don't really interact with them. They're held in these cages, so they have sort of a cage that goes around them, because robots can be really dangerous because they have no idea what you're feeling and
It's
whatnot.
interesting you say that because
So why should they be a security guard?
I was at the Gigafactory opening, and I was on a private VIP tour, and but I'm like literally on this VIP tour, and they kind of let us walk around the factory, and there's robots all around us walking on paths, and they have like tape down to show the. And I went over to one of the robots. And somebody's like, "Oh, take a picture." So I turn around, and the guy's like, "No, no, 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 no." And I was like, "Well, no pictures?" He's like, "No, no, not the pictures. Look where you're standing." And I was standing, and I crossed the yellow line. He goes, "If you were 1 inch backwards, you would have crossed this plane. You see this?" And he showed me these lasers or whatever. He said, "If you crossed that plane, these robots would all shut down." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "So it doesn't pin you against the wall and crush your skull. It could kill you." Like, and this has happened actually. People have gotten into the pens where the robots are. And these robots move quickly. I mean, when you watch them, they've slowed them down to make them more safe, I think, but they can move very fastly, and they're very solid, big robotic arms. Like, they could hurt you for sure, could break your jaw, whatever. It's gonna, and yeah, this is actually pulling up my screen one more time. Unless ABC News is,
No, that's right. I don't know a
ABC
ton about
News
this at
seems
all,
to-
so I
that's
shouldn't
it.
have it.
Well, I mean, a kid
shouldn't
could
be
run
commenting
into.
on it. That poor little kid. That
No,
little
I
leg.
think-
So sweet.
I think
heal
kids
fast.
get worse burns and broken
So
bones
it
on swings.
burned itself, though.
It looks like a friction burn to me of some type, but it got run over, got knocked down and run over. So I think, yeah.
He's got that good young blood that will heal
Yeah.
him really
You
fast.
know what? Honestly, with these kids, they're so soft today. These kids got to get used to fighting robots. Honestly,
like-
they're going to be fighting robots their whole lives
For jobs.
Yeah.
for jobs.
Wait.
When they try to get food, when the AI takes over and it doesn't want to, it starts rationing out our food to 1,000 calories a day because that's what makes the most sense for humans is to only eat That's what these robots and AI are going to decide. They're going to be like, hey, if you guys eat 1,200 calories a day, you're going to live longer, and you told us to protect humans, and so we're just protecting you by giving you 900 calories a day.
Gosh, I'd rather die young and eat more. I don't know.
Exactly. Well, don't worry, just transfusion. There was actually at the demo day yesterday for Y Combinator. At the demo day, they had a drone version of Nightscope. So drones that had flashing lights on them that would go around your building at night or whatever and look for people. But the really brilliant part about it was that it had like a strobe flashlight that would blind you on it. So like if you're where you're not supposed to be, the drone that's going around the building all of a sudden zips over to you in the parking lot and goes "Doof," and puts a huge floodlight on you and blinds you basically, and then follows you around until the security guard gets there. So if you try to run, it's just going to follow you with the floodlight on you.
That's cool.
It's kind of, I think I saw that. Was that Terminator 2 when had the flying, or Terminator 3? I don't know. Terminator Redemption?
I mean, I've only seen Terminator movies once or twice.
Is
so
it, actually, the other robotic tip that I think
haven't
is kind of interesting is there's a new delivery service that I believe is in Australia. But it looks like one of the robots that the Jawas had in Star Wars. It's like a little square robot.
Is this the pizza delivery one?
I think it can deliver
It looks
pizza.
like a photocopier on wheels.
It looks like an HP LaserJet one with wheels, and it just goes 4 or 5 miles an hour down sidewalks. And it's so heavy, and it's got a camera on it that nobody's going to kick it over or try to rob it, right? Like you can pick up a mailbox if you want. It's a federal offense, I think.
Yeah.
So this will be delivering your whatever you order.
Your pizza.
I don't know, your iPhone 7.
I think it's crazy that there are self-driving trucks on the roads in Nevada already.
What? There's got to be a person behind the wheel.
I don't think so. I think Nevada has somebody at DFJ was telling me this that
Really?
that there is
Auto?
a fleet of self-driving trucks. Again, I could be completely making up rumors here. This
Well,
is one of
didn't
those
Uber-
Yeah.
this is literal cocktail party
Purchase,
conversation.
Fun. We like it.
The self-driving
Auto.
truck company recently. Yeah.
They got bought by Uber.
Yeah.
I didn't see
I
that
think it's
coming.
right around the corner, but
And then
know
Uber
if it's already
launched this. I don't know if you saw it, but they're doing something with Volvo, and they're going to have
In
these
Pittsburgh.
self-driving stuff in Pittsburgh this month.
I mean, crazy. I thought that maybe my children would then have self-driving cars, not that I would have self-driving. I mean, it's just incredible how quickly that it's
It's interesting
here.
because I do see NBC every other week, and like a lot of times because I was an Uber investor, they want to talk to me about Uber, and I always talk to Travis or somebody who I say, hey, they want to ask me about this. Should I comment or not? Because it's not my company. I don't want to comment. They kept asking me to talk about Tesla's self-driving and Tesla's fleet and all this stuff, self-driving stuff. And like 2 months ago, they're like, yeah, let's hold off on talking about self-driving right now. we have something coming. And I was like, okay, don't tell me. Because I literally tell the communication people there, do not tell me anything.
Right.
I don't want to ever have people perceive me as the leak. So just don't tell me. I wake up that morning, I was like, wow, Uber is doing everything right. They got the DD partnership in China, so they don't have to, those two companies don't have to hemorrhage cash. And now they've got self-driving at least. Seems like they're in the lead. Are they in the lead now, would you say, objectively? I'm not objective because I'm an investor.
We had an article come out this morning that they're the most used device in the world. Most used, ride-hailing app in the world on Android devices by far.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So
the question is, will they...
everybody knew that already, but we didn't quite have
But who's in the lead on
data.
self-driving? It's like my question. Because Google has not deployed anything in the real world. They're being super conservative, and their product still costs $50,000 with LiDAR, is my understanding. So it's not realistic. Tesla's only got a couple of thousand or tens of thousands, but they seem to be pretty much in the lead on level 2 autonomy. But this seems like a lot more than level 2 autonomy involved. So who's in the lead, do you think, Jeff?
I don't know the answer to that, and I actually wonder with Uber if this is just a way for them to sort of put their flag in the ground and say we're first. Does it mean they really are, though? So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
It feels to... Yeah, what do you think, Jeff? Who's in the lead on self-driving?
I would be speculating beyond my pay grade if I said that. But,
welcome to the show.
Yeah.
That's what we do here.
I mean, Uber seems to have momentum, if you put it that way.
It's interesting. I've now done 1,000-mile self-driving, I would say. I went to Tahoe, and I got a Model X, and I have self-driving that. The Model S, I don't have self-driving. But they gave me a Model S as a loaner to when they first came out with self-driving, so I played with it. So I probably put 1,000 miles on it. It's disturbingly good on highways. And then when I was in Tahoe, it was disturbingly good on winding roads. But they have put a lot of safeguards in place. I noticed that I took my seatbelt off to take off my jacket. It disabled autopilot, I should say. And I was like, why would it do that? And then I was like, oh, it thinks that I'm going to go in the back seat or switch drivers. So, and it turns out somebody did this on video, I believe. They switched drivers while it was on autopilot, which makes total sense. It's totally capable of that. And then I noticed when you're under a certain mile per hour, it doesn't seem to enforce, when you're on winding roads or head-on roads, it seems to go 5 miles below. It doesn't let you speed and use autopilot, basically. So if the road is 35 miles an hour on a windy road in Tahoe, it capped autopilot to 30 miles an hour, which was interesting. But when you're on the highway, if you put autopilot on and you're 10 miles over the speed limit, it doesn't cap you. So they're dialing it in, but I have to say it lulls you.
It probably wants you to go with the flow of traffic because that's safer to go with the flow than to just...
Or they just don't want bad press that somebody's going 100 miles an hour with autopilot on.
That's interesting.
Right, but I'm saying on a highway, it's actually safer probably to go with the speed. So if people are speeding, it might actually be safer to go at the same speed as them so that you're...
It's so accurate that I can understand why people would jump the fence and, go to sleep. I would never do it. You have to be an idiot to do it. But I can see that people would overestimate its capabilities. And I don't think it's Tesla's fault.
People fall asleep at the wheel anyway?
Yeah, of course. So. But, I mean, and how many people have run off the highway with cruise control on and fallen asleep, like you're saying? But it is scary how accurate it is. Have you driven it yet?
I've only for a minute or two, yeah.
Have you driven it yet?
No.
Find somebody with it.
Waiting for someone to invite me.
We'll all go for a ride after this. It's disturbingly accurate, and I think it's going to be one of these compounding things where it creeps up on us how quickly it works.
There's going to be a real adjustment period where we learn to live with these technologies, and every time there's an accident like the one in Florida, it's so much more appalling to people, the idea that somebody, anything plus technology is always going to be a bigger story than that same thing on its own.
For sure. That guy was probably watching a movie, it seems. That's
yes.
Really bad. That's really bad.
I know, but don't you feel like like you would have a tougher time now driving a different car that didn't have advanced safety features? Like you would be a less safe driver in that car? You don't come to rely on those?
I don't think you rely on it, but I will say I keep switching between my S and my X because the X I got for my wife and the S is mine, and the S doesn't have it, but the X does. And so sometimes I take the X, sometimes she takes the S, whatever. And when I switch back and forth, there is definitely an adjustment period where it feels like two different generations of cars that are 20 years. It's like going from like a car without air conditioning and lap belts and one big bench in the front to like a modern car. Like, it really is jarring when you don't have it. So to a certain extent, I don't think it makes you worse, but boy, do you feel more confident in it and you feel like this is the way cars should work. And I was telling somebody when this accident happened, I said, if you could choose to be on the 101 with nobody on autopilot or on the 280, which are, for people watching at home, it's just parallel highways here in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. And the 280 was only for people with autopilot. Which one would you want to be on?
So, here's my pet theory.
Yeah.
I think that the right to drive your own car is going to be the new gun rights in whatever timetable this happens. But
another good observation.
It's going to be because think about the liability issues. What we're going to have first is self-driving only highways. And if you want to drive on them, then you have to surrender control of your vehicle.
Sure.
And it's going to expand and expand and expand. And what's the only thing as American as owning your gun is driving your car. I think it is going to be a huge backlash movement.
I think that's what the Mad Max sequel is. I think it's not over water. I think it's over self-driving and guns. That's an interesting one. I like to just basically drive down the 280 firing my gun out of the sunroof. But it does, I agree with you, because if you got onto let's say in a modern city where there's two highways, you could say the 280 is self-driving only at some point and the 101 is for non-self-driving or vice versa. Or take the surface streets. If you get on the highway, you have to commit to self-driving because it keeps the flow going.
Right.
That's the reason.
Highways and cities, probably where it'll start.
Yeah.
And then it'll be like that, Red Barchetta, that Rush song. Dating myself? Anyway.
Nobody knows what you're
Don't
talking
look
about. What? Explain.
There's a Rush song about this version of the future.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. This has been an amazing episode of This Week in Startups. What we've learned is that Hampton Creek, what have we learned? Hampton Creek is going to be on the program, and hopefully Josh will answer for the inquiry that the SEC is doing and Olivia's pieces. And Olivia may drop another piece, and she's off to a very promising start as an investigative journalist. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And you're going to be doing video stuff for, I'm assuming, because you're documentarian.
That's the plan. I wouldn't say I'm an investigative journalist. I'm just a journalist.
Yeah, just happened to
Investigative is
just broke.
another
In
level.
our first 6 months, broke a story that the SEC has done an inquiry into. So, well, good start. Do one of those a year. You'll be
Right
on your
place,
way.
right time, I guess.
Yeah. Well, things don't happen by accident. And we've learned that Peter Tiel will remain on the board of Facebook because they need to have a wacky conservative. Those are Jeff's words, not mine. He never said wacky. What did you think, Jeff, of his speech at the RNC? I'm assuming you saw it.
I thought it was calculatedly boring. I think that it's to me it's been fascinating as somebody who has interviewed him a few times and knows a fair amount about his sort of more outre ideas. That to me it's been fascinating to watch him become a public figure in America. It's just, I mean, objectively, he's a great character. I love having him on the national stage because before, as a journalist, you'd be like, I love writing about this guy. I'm so interested in him, but crickets.
Yeah, it's like an asterisk. Peter Tiel was the co-founder of PayPal.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, now it's like, oh yeah, no, he's the gay dude who is on the board of Facebook who was at the RNC.
Yeah.
Do you think he really supports Trump?
Oh man, this is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, you've written a really good piece about this. I think you should talk about it.
Yes, he definitely supports Trump. I think it's as with all things with Peter Tiel. I think you have this this very elaborate intellectual framework fused to some
Agenda,
but some Peter thinks of himself as sort of a creature of pure reason, right?
Yes. He likes to think that he has this, like, what do you believe in that's right that nobody else believes but they're wrong, right? Whatever that in 0 to 1 is.
Right. Yeah. He loves these elaborate intellectual frameworks, but he's also a person with feelings, and he got angry at Gawker and erected this intellectual framework to explain what he was doing. But really, those of us who operate on a more human level recognize it as a revenge plot. So I think with Gawker, with Trump, it's the same kind of thing. He certainly has some ideas about the economy and innovation and democracy and how we're in a stalled period right now and need a big shakeup to move forward. But I think it's also fused to the fact that he hates political correctness. He wrote some things when he was a student at Stanford and afterwards that were very anti the PC sentiment of the moment. And I think in Trump, he sees somebody who he's very attracted to that, to Trump's offensiveness, basically.
It's sort of ironic given that he dislikes Gawker so much, because I feel like Trump and Gawker have that same sort of like, we're going to say anything and we're going to essentially like play with fire a little bit in that that colorfulness. And so it's interesting, the two. Do
you think Thiel has aspirations? This is what somebody told me. Secretary of the Treasury. Secretary of the
You would
Treasury.
know. I don't know, and I still want to talk about your piece,
probably shouldn't have said that on air,
but
can you imagine if Trump wins, which is like a 20% chance I give it? I mean, listen, and I've played cards. I've seen people hit 2 outers, 1 outer. I had top full house in the World Series of Poker, and this kid hit quads. I'm not kidding.
Well, let's hope that the presidential election is a little more.
Trump could spike quads. You never know. We could have an ISIS attack, and Hillary Clinton could have a seizure on the same day, and everybody votes for Trump. I mean, it sounds crazy, but if those two things happen in the same month, literally, if Hillary Clinton, I don't think she's suffering from seizures, but if she just happened to have a seizure or tripped, and people thought she was sick, and an ISIS attack, people might tip him over.
I don't think he would. I don't know. I want to say that I don't think he'd be interested in Secretary of the Treasury, but. Geez, I am so unqualified to guess what
Secretary of State
he actually believes or what he would actually do. He is beyond my power to predict.
Can you imagine a Trump cabinet? Omarosa, Peter Tiel.
Omarosa from...
Yeah, I'm joking. Okay. But I mean, I
wouldn't it be all guys named Steve? Wasn't there something about how everybody, all of his economic advisors are named Steve?
I can't keep up.
Who's the B celebrity who...
Gary
Scott
Busey?
Baio?
Not Scott. Oh yeah, so Scott Baio could be in the. He'd be like education. Make him in charge of education. He needs to.
In charge. He would be.
Well,
he is born to be in charge. Yeah.
He's been in charge of a lot of things. You've seen the television show. Listen, there's a lot of losers in education.
He's in charge of our days. He's in charge of our nights.
He's in charge. All right.
This is great.
And we've also learned that.
That was a great impersonation, too. Very good.
I've been working on it at poker.
Very, very good.
Listen, Calacanis is a great governor for the state of California. There's a lot of other losers. He's a winner. Invested in Uber. I may run for mayor.
I was about to ask,
against
but
Kara?
I didn't want to go there.
I'm going to probably run against Kara. Well, here's the thing.
Oh, please. That would be so great to see the two of you.
I was just joking about, how I could run this town better than Ed Lee and all this crazy corruption that's going on, and they can't solve very basic problems like traffic and crime, and I could solve that in 10 seconds. Now I'm really sounding like Trump. But then I saw Trump, and my God, he's really got a chance. I didn't think that was possible. So if an idiot like Trump, who has absolutely no plan, and I kind of think I'm clever at on my good days, I'm pretty clever. I mean, I'm not smart, but I'm clever. I think I could get 20 points. That'd be fun.
But do you want to do the job?
No.
You just want to win.
No, but in 10 years, I might be really bored. And if Kara's running, and she's a friend of mine, we're good friends, that'd be hilarious to watch the debates. So I say this amongst a group of friends, and literally 4 people go, I'll put up $250K. I'll put up $1 million in support.
Well, of course, because your friends are probably millionaires and
millionaires. I don't know any millionaires.
Billionaires. Excuse me, billionaires.
I don't know any millionaires. All the sent to millionaires, but
that's
billionaires.
less than a parking ticket for them.
Well, no, and so literally, I got 4 power players who were like, "Yeah, we'll put $1 million up," and then one master of the universe, very high profile tech guy, was like, "I will introduce you, and I will
Peter Tiel said that?
No, better. We'll leave it off the table who it was. But somebody like even like 5 times more important than Peter, 10 times more important than Peter said, I will introduce you at the rallies and tell everybody to vote for you. But you have to do it.
Could it be?
I'll take over the podcast. Will
you do that? Will you
You're
guys hold
right.
on the fort here on the podcast?
Yeah, you'll have
All
to
right,
recuse
listen.
yourself.
What an amazing episode. Congratulations, Olivia. Everybody follow Olivia, Zaleski, Zaleski. And Jeff Bercovici. I got it.
You got it. You
Jeff
know
Bercovici,
it now.
but it's Berovici. Follow him on Twitter, Jeff, Berovici. Thank you so much to Inc. and Bloomberg and Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie and our partners, Design Crowd and Arrow, all great products and services, great journalists, blah, 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 blah. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.